When Dr. Phil heard the words come out of his guest's mouth, he let the papers in his hands fall and said, "Stop recording." The entire studio went still. The cameras stopped. The audience fell silent. And in that moment, 30 years of hidden truth began to surface in front of millions. What followed would reshape not only one family, but also everyone watching. It was meant to be a standard taping. Episode 2847 of The Dr. Phil Show. The guest list simply said, Robert, 58, family reconciliation, a typical situation for a program that had addressed thousands of family issues over the years. Robert had contacted the show 6 months earlier with what appeared to be a simple case. He hoped to reconnect with his adult daughter, Emily, after years of distance. The producers completed their pre-interview, gathered background details, and scheduled the appearance. On paper, it seemed straightforward, a father who had been absent during his daughter's early life wanting to make things right. Dr. Phil had worked with many similar cases, estranged parents, broken relationships, the long path toward healing. But something about Robert felt unusual the moment he stepped onto the stage. Dr. Phil noticed it instantly, the trembling in Robert's hands and the way he avoided eye contact with his daughter. The show began as usual. Dr. Phil introduced the situation. Robert, you say you want to apologize to your daughter Emily for missing much of her childhood. You report that you were working overseas to build your career and weren't there while she grew up. Is that accurate? Yes, Dr. Phil, Robert replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Emily sat across from him with her arms folded, her expression firm. She agreed to appear on the show, but made it clear she wasn't ready to excuse anything. He put his career above his family, she said. He missed my graduation, my wedding, the birth of my children, all because he said he was creating a better future for us. But we didn't need better. We needed him. The audience reacted with quiet agreement. This was a familiar narrative. Dr. Phil turned back to Robert. So today, your intention is to apologize to Emily. You want to rebuild your relationship. Robert hesitated far too long. Dr. Phil focused on him. Dr. Phil, Robert finally said, his voice weakening. I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Not Emily. Not my ex-wife. No one. The control room producer leaned forward. This wasn't in the notes. Dr. Phil lowered his cards. Robert, what is it? I wasn't overseas working. Emily's expression shifted from anger to confusion. What? I was in prison. The audience reacted with shock. Emily's face went pale. Dr. Phil didn't move, keeping his eyes on Robert. For how long? He asked, using the tone he reserved for moments when he sensed the real story was just beginning. Robert tightened his grip on the chair arms. 17 years. Emily stood. What? No, you were in Singapore. You were working for an engineering company. Mom showed me your letters and postcards. Robert's face fell. Those weren't written by me. Dr. Phil raised his hand. Hold on. Stop. Stop the tape. Everything stopped immediately. Across more than 4,000 episodes, Dr. Phil had only halted recording a few times. The cameras shut off. Microphones lowered. The audience sat in stunned silence. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most critical part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil stepped away from the main stage and motioned for Robert and Emily to join him in the side consultation area, a smaller space used for private discussions. The lighting was softer and there were only a few chairs. The cameras remained off. Robert, Dr. Phil said firmly but calmly. We're not continuing in front of an audience until you tell me exactly what happened. Everything. Now. Robert covered his face with his hands. Emily stood frozen, trying to absorb what she had heard. I was arrested when Emily was 7, Robert began. Armed robbery. I was desperate and made a terrible decision. I got 17 years. And the letters? The postcards? Dr. Phil asked. My brother lived in Singapore. I asked him to send them so it would look like I was working there. My ex-wife knew the truth, but she didn't want Emily growing up knowing her father was in prison, so she kept the story going. Emily nearly collapsed. Dr. Phil helped her sit. You're telling me, she said quietly, that my whole childhood was based on a lie? That mom knew you were in prison and no one told me. I wanted to tell you so many times, Robert said, crying. Your mother thought hiding it was better. She believed you'd have a more normal life if you didn't know. And when I was released, you were already an adult with your own family. I didn't know how to come forward. Dr. Phil sat across from them. Robert, why come here? Why now? Because I'm dying. The words hung in the air. Even the crew, accustomed to difficult stories, felt the weight of it. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Robert continued. The doctors say 6 months, maybe 8. And I realized I can't leave this world with this lie still between us. Emily deserves the truth. Even if she never forgives me, she should know who her father actually is. Dr. Phil looked at Emily, her face showing shock, anger, and the first signs of a new kind of grief forming. Emily, Dr. Phil said softly, I know this is a lot to take in. Take a moment if you need to, but I have to ask, did you ever sense something was off? Looking back, were there any signs? Emily's voice wavered. There were things that never added up, she whispered. Mom would get uneasy whenever I asked about Dad's job. The postcards always had the same handwriting but different stamps. And when he finally came home when I was 24, he looked much older than I expected, tired, like he'd been through something difficult. She looked at Robert. I thought you were cheating. I thought that's why Mom acted strange. I never imagined the truth. I'm sorry, Robert cried. I'm so sorry. At that moment, Dr. Phil made a choice that shaped the entire episode. He stood and walked to the production booth. The cameras were still off. He spoke to his lead producer. Bring me the envelope. A few minutes later, a production assistant handed him a sealed manila envelope. Dr. Phil held it for a moment before returning to Robert and Emily. Robert, when you applied to be on this show, we ran background checks. That's standard. This envelope contains your prison records, your release papers, everything. I've known the truth for 3 weeks. Robert stared at him. You knew? I did, Dr. Phil replied. And I chose not to tell you because I wanted to see whether you would tell the truth yourself, on camera, in front of your daughter. The room fell silent. Why not confront him earlier? Emily asked. Dr. Phil sat down again. Because, Emily, your father needed to show himself that he could be honest before proving it to you. He had to break a pattern of 30 years of hiding. He turned to Robert. You came here planning to tell the truth, didn't you? Yes, Robert said quietly. I couldn't continue living this way. Even if it meant losing Emily, I had to tell her. Dr. Phil pulled a handwritten note from the envelope. Before we go back out there, I want to read you something. This is from your mother, Emily. She agreed to write it when we contacted her during our background check. Emily's eyes widened. Mom knows. She does, Dr. Phil said. And this is her message to both of you. He read the letter. Dear Emily and Robert, if you're hearing this, it means Robert finally shared the truth. Emily, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was avoiding the emotional weight of explaining your father's choices. You deserved honesty. And Robert, I forgive you. Not for the crime, but for trying to protect Emily in the only way you believed you could. It's time for all of us to stop avoiding the truth. Emily began to cry, not out of anger this time, but from the weight of lost years and the clarity of finally knowing. Dr. Phil placed the card on the table. Robert, you've said you're dying. Emily, your father likely has 6 months. What happens from here is your decision. Here's what I see. A man who spent 17 years in prison and 13 more living with the consequences of hiding his past. And a daughter who deserves the chance to know her father before time runs out. He paused. This isn't about debating whether he was right or wrong. He knows he was wrong. The real question is whether you want to spend his remaining months focused on the past or building something genuine now. Emily looked at her father, truly looked at him, for the first time. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said. Not now? Maybe not ever. I understand, Robert replied. But, Emily continued, her voice clearer, I want to know you, the real you. Not the dad in Singapore, not the absent father. The actual person. Robert's expression shifted between tears and a small smile. I'd like that. Dr. Phil stood. Here's what we're going to do. We'll go back on stage and finish the episode. Then I'll connect you both with a family therapist who specializes in trauma and reconciliation. It won't be easy or fast, but if you both commit, you can build something meaningful with the time left. He handed Emily her mother's card. Keep this. When things feel overwhelming, and they will, read it. Remember that everyone involved made mistakes, but also cared about you. They returned to the main stage. The cameras powered on. The audience, waiting in darkness, straightened up. Dr. Phil addressed them. Folks, what you're about to see continues a conversation that began with one of the most significant revelations we've ever had on this show. Robert hid the truth for 30 years. Today he told it, and now he and his daughter will decide how to move forward. Filming continued for another 40 minutes. They talked, sometimes crying, sometimes frustrated, sometimes sharing moments that made more sense now that everything was out in the open. When the taping ended, Emily and Robert embraced for the first time in 13 years. It wasn't perfect. It was complicated and emotional, but it was real. After filming, Dr. Phil did something unusual. He remained on set for another hour, talking with them privately. He connected them with Dr. Sarah Martinez, a specialist in family trauma. He arranged for Robert's medical records to be reviewed by an oncology center focused on advanced treatments. He ensured Emily received counseling resources. "This is what people don't see," Dr. Phil later told his team. "The cameras capture the moment, but the real progress happens afterward. Robert may only have months, but they can matter more than the decades shaped by secrets." 3 months later, the episode aired, and the response was major. It became one of the most viewed in the show's history and a turning point for Robert and Emily. They spent Robert's remaining months forming a genuine relationship. Emily brought her children to meet their grandfather, not a fictional version, but the real man, with his flaws and lessons. Robert shared stories about his life, his regrets, his time in prison, and what he learned. 7 months after taping, when Robert passed away, Emily stood at his funeral and said, "My father made terrible mistakes," Emily said. "He lied to me for most of my life. But in his final months, he gave me something far more valuable than a lifetime of lies. He gave me the truth. And that truth, as difficult as it was, brought freedom to both of us." Dr. Phil attended the funeral. He didn't speak publicly, but he stood at the back, witnessing a family, fractured by deception, begin to heal through honesty. Later, reflecting on the episode, Dr. Phil told his team, "We see a lot of drama on this show. People come here for different reasons, some positive, some not. But occasionally, you meet someone like Robert, someone genuinely trying to do the right thing, even if it costs them everything. That's when this work matters most." The envelope that sparked everything, the one with Robert's prison records and his ex-wife's letter, remained in the show's archives. But the handwritten note from Emily's mother stayed with Emily. She framed it and kept it on her desk as a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comforting lie. Years later, Emily returned to the show, not as a guest in conflict, but as someone sharing her journey of healing. Dr. Phil asked her if she could forgive her father. Emily replied, "I didn't know." Forgiveness wasn't instantaneous. It unfolded over months, through hundreds of small conversations, shared tears, memories, and the gradual rebuilding of trust. She held up the framed card. "This is from my mom. She wrote it years ago, before my dad appeared on the show. She wanted me to understand that everyone involved, Dad, her, even me, we all made decisions based on what we believed was best at the time. Were they always right? No, but they were human choices." Dr. Phil nodded. "And now, where are you with all of it?" Emily smiled, a genuine smile, not forced. "I'm grateful. Grateful I had 7 months with my real father instead of a lifetime with a fantasy. Grateful Dr. Phil stopped the tape that day and gave us space to be honest. And grateful for everyone who watched that episode and found the courage to tell their own truths." The audience stood and applauded, not the loud, dramatic applause of a conflict resolved, but a quiet, profound recognition of real growth, real healing, and real change. That's the power of truth. That's what happened the day Dr. Phil paused recording because someone finally admitted, "I lied for 30 years." The episode has become a reference point in discussions on family therapy, reconciliation, and the value of honesty. It's used in counseling programs, shared in support groups, and cited by therapists working with families in crisis. But beyond the professional impact, beyond the millions of views, awards, and recognition, there's something simpler at its core. A father and daughter reconnecting in the time they had left, not because everything was fixed or fully forgiven, but because someone finally chose to stop lying. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change everything.